How's it going, guys? Riley here, and welcome back to my channel. It's time to overthink the Sandersides, because that's what we do best on this channel. So, as most of you all should know by this point, about a week and a half ago, we finally got the newest Sandersides episode, the You versus Yourself, Putting Others First, Selfishness versus Selflessness, Redux. Of course, SvS has to be in the title again, because I can't say my S's. But anyway, the episode was great, obviously. I loved it. There were so many small things I could talk about of why I adore this episode and why I think this episode is one of the best ever made. On top of the, just stellar acting by Thomas, as always. The amazing editing of all the different video game references, the music, the lesson that's taught that I think is very important. And just the consistency of storytelling from the original SvS to SvS Part 2. So, pretty much what I'm going to do to make this easier on myself is I'm going to tell you guys how I felt about the episode, but I'm going to do it in a different way than I normally do. I'm actually going to go to the comments of my react and look at some of your all's comments and be kind of like, hey, I want to talk about this specifically. So I'll try to make sure I say your username. I'm going to go ahead and apologize for anybody whose username I screw up because I am not good at pronouncing things. I apologize. So let us begin. I've sorted my comments onto YouTube on my computer right here in front of me, and I've sorted them by newest first and then scrolled all the way down to the bottom. And as some of you know, Thomas did watch my reacts, so that's awesome. Thank you, Thomas. He has watched actually a lot of my reacts, so it's always kind of funny to see his comment pop up at some point. And I joked about it at the beginning of the react that this episode was 51 minutes long, and he was just like, "Oh, this isn't too long," and I'm like, "No, it's a joke. I'm sorry, it's a joke. I wish I'd said that because it makes me feel like an asshole." The episodes can be as long as they want. It doesn't bother me. I don't care. Anyway, so I've rambled on long enough, so let's get started. I'm gonna look at some of these comments, so I might get a little quiet because I'm reading them, but I do think that some of these comments are great, and I think they're good for basing a conversation off of when it comes to the discussion of this amazing episode. So the first comment I really want to mention is from EnderChild57. They talk about how we have a matchup of light side versus dark side. Now, a lot of you know I'm not, those of you who've seen my other theory videos or even my old live streams I used to do, I'm not the biggest fan of the actual light side, dark side dichotomy because of the fact that humans are a natural gray area. I don't really feel like there actually is a light side and a dark side because, Roman's the only one who's ever said that, and we know he sees things in pure black and white. This episode specifically pointed that out. But I do see how you would have, one on one side and one on the other that would relate to each other. And Enderchild says Logan and Virgil, Remus and Roman, and then Patton and Janice. And I agree, those make sense, obviously. Though we do have the unnamed other side that we know exists, one from this thumbnail, and two from speculation of the fact that we know that we're pretty sure that color theory is legitimate, and there's only one color of the rainbow that hasn't been done yet with the side, which is the orange side, so there's that. But no, I agree that the sides do kind of counterbalance each other, which I think is necessary. If we talk about the fact that there are no good or evil sides, but it does make sense that there would be two sides of the same coin when talking about a specific perspective. So, obviously, Patton and Janice would be foils to each other because Patton is all about caring for other people, whereas Janice is more about caring about yourself. And, and that's why, you have Logic, whose foil would be anxiety, because they always say that when you're anxious, your logic goes out the window. It doesn't matter anymore. You don't think logically when you're anxious. You get overwhelmed. So obviously those would be, because we have seen an episode where Logan was able to calm Virgil down rationally and actually talk to him about things, and that was my negative thinking way back when. So obviously those two are foil. And then of course Roman and Remus obviously are a foil to each other because they both represent the same idea, creativity, but one of them is a purely good perspective of creativity and the other one is a purely dark perspective of creativity. So them being foils to each other obviously makes sense. I agree with this comment, so good comment. And this person here kind of did then edit over and over again. This is oof.jpg, which I feel your title. Your name is awesome. And so, yeah, this right here, so their second edit is, they said, listen, Logan is so angsty and sad in this episode. Like, everything at the end of the episode, he says, intentionally making his fast optional, and for Roman to basically say he's unnecessarily, and Patton just straight up making him shut up, not to mention all the other times he's interrupted throughout the episode. What I'm saying is the next episode is going to be emotional turmoil for literally every character, and I ain't ready. So, Logan has a lot in this episode, I feel. I feel like there's a lot that is going to come up for him later. I feel like right now we're building up to Roman's arc, obviously. Him basically leaving right at the end of the episode without, you know, really finishing his upsetness, you know, like not making him feel better. Obviously him just leaving kind of leads into this, you know, idea that we're going to start talking about his stuff. Now that we've kind of settled on Janice's stuff just a little bit, I feel like we're not done with his side of the stuff. Like, he's gonna be a little poke in the butt a little bit more still, but I feel like that's also his purpose. But anyway, I'm getting off topic. Logan, I do feel like his stuff is coming up because in this episode, most of it is them ignoring him. He first shows up the way he does, so he's not as intrusive, which Roman says, oh, you kind of were, 'cause you scared the crap out of us. And then, of course, you know, Roman clicking the ignorant button, to ignore Logan's, facts, and then you also have Patton hitting the skip all button because Logan didn't agree with him. You can kind of see how Patton in this episode is kind of doing the same thing that Deceit had did before, where Deceit worked with Logan to get Logan to do what he needed him to in Can Lying Be Good, where he put a scenario in where Logan felt important, so he would like give definitions of the lying and stuff and made him fit in. Patton doesn't really, I don't know if he really wants that, because I don't think you can tell in the episode with the different facial expressions that Thomas gives him that Patton is definitely uncertain in the way that he thinks. He doesn't know whether or not the way he thinks is the correct way to think. He just knows this is what he believes, which is what Thomas has been instilled to believe. So, obviously, if those things are being challenged by Thomas learning more about not only himself, but also the world around him, obviously Patton is going to be affected by that. Which leads into something I'm going to talk about later. This episode's going to be pretty long, so if you don't have a drink and some popcorn, I suggest you pause the video, maybe even hit the subscribe button and that bell icon, and maybe like this video too, you know, all that YouTube guys, you know what I'm talking about. But anyway, so that's where I'm at with Logan on this. I think I wish Logan could have heard Roman and all of them whenever Deceit first showed up, because Roman's first thing after Deceit showed up in that game space was, what did you do with Logan? And Deceit, at the time, Deceit was just like, you know, nothing, and I resent the question. So I wish Logan knew that they cared, that the first thing that they asked was, where is Logan? But of course, you know, you gotta have your angst, so of course he can't hear it, right? But yeah, so I know Logan is gonna be, he's gonna do something. Something is gonna relate to him, whether it's the new side that's gonna relate to him, because I've always, as much as I agree that Logan could be Virgil's foil and vice versa, I really think Virgil's more of a middle ground side. I've always felt like he was the gray area of the sides, where he's just not good and he's not bad. He's somewhere in the middle because he fluctuates. He's always a little different, because sometimes your anxiety is low, sometimes it's high, sometimes it's, you know, right perfectly equilibrium. It varies. So that's my opinion on that. So the next thing this person says is they talk about how Roman immediately dismissing his own thoughts as stupid. He's used to being talked over, called ignorant, his ideas are dismissed, and he's frequently started to feel like any thought that isn't agreeing with someone else that isn't worthy of voicing. I agree with that. You can tell in the middle, I don't have a timestamp or anything, but there's a part in the episode when Thomas wants to hear Roman's side of things, how he sees what's going on. And Roman keeps trying to explain, and Patton kind of keeps intruding, and eventually Patton's like, I'm sorry, Roman, you know, and Thomas is like, go ahead, Roman, I want to know what you think. And Roman doesn't, you can see it in his face, he doesn't really know how to explain how he feels. And then as soon as he does, Patton says he's wrong. So obviously Roman's just kind of like, okay, maybe I shouldn't voice my opinion then. Because the thing is in the mindscape of Thomas's personality, Patton is the leader. He's the one that calls all the shots because he's the one that knows the difference between right and wrong and majorly tells them what to do. I mean, Thomas has even said in a previous episode that the reason why he started making videos again was because of Patton. So we know Patton's decision making very heavily influences what Thomas does. So Roman has always listened to him. So now that Patton is sitting there telling Roman that the way he thinks is wrong, like, you know, obviously the fact that in the last SvS episode, he basically called out Roman for agreeing with deceit. You know, I thought you fought for honor and all that stuff. So, you know, I think Roman is greatly confused and he doesn't trust his own thoughts because that's what he's been taught to believe. He's been taught to believe that his own thoughts don't matter, that the way that he perceives the situation is inherently incorrect, which obviously is false. That's incredibly untrue. So that really did hurt me in this most recent episode, was the fact that Roman, his opinion was asked for, but he couldn't really give it because he knew that it would be disagreed with. So that's why he didn't, and it makes me sad. I wish he would just open his mouth more because I feel like Roman has a really good perspective on the situation, especially after the scene in SvS 1, whenever Patton tries to get Roman to feel bad that Liza Minnelli won't come to his wedding, but he's just like, that doesn't change that it's my big day. And that's exactly what Deceit was trying to get across in that episode, was the fact that just because Thomas wouldn't be at Leah and Mary Lee's wedding doesn't mean that it would change how good the wedding was for Leah and Mary Lee. It's still their day. And I think that kind of analogy there, when Roman did that, I thought that was so good. And I wish we'd have been able to do that again, like have that recognized again, but we didn't. So that's that. So a lot of you in my comments are talking about Janus's definition, like the name of Janus's name. Now, we all know that they're pronouncing it that way, but the actual pronunciation of the Roman god of duality that it is based on is Janus. Now, the reason why they're not saying that is obviously the pronunciation would be a very Remus-directed pronunciation who would completely make it inappropriate, so they're pronouncing it Janus, which I completely respect 100% because I think most of the fandom is probably young, and I feel like the jokes on that would just never end. But no, yes, Janus is related to the duality of the Roman god, and it is a two-faced person, which makes sense because we have the snake face and the human face for Deceit. So yeah, that name makes sense, and it was also a predicted name. I said that in my react, and this is crazy, guys. So I don't remember the user's name. I'll find it and I'll put it on screen or in a picture here. But there was a user who predicted Janus's name the day Deceit came out over 2 years ago. Same day. The same day Deceit came out and premiered in Can Lying Be Good, they predicted it. I mean, within hours of the episode. Wow. That blew my mind. Like, I knew that person had predicted it, but I didn't know it had been on the same day, so that was kind of weird. Okay, so this comment has gotten a little bit of a discussion in my comments, where the user, I can't read Japanese kanji, so I don't know what your name says. I apologize. But they've said that they always thought that Janus was right, and that Patton was being manipulative, and the fandom was hating on Janus for the whole year. And now that he's, you know, acknowledged as not an evil side, because he's not evil, he never was, you know, he always had Thomas's best interests in mind, not a malice thing, and that they're sad that their second favorite character, Roman, has some issues with Janus, then they just want them to get along. I agree with most of what you said. I don't agree that he's not a not evil side, because he is. I mean, lying is still wrong. I would say that Janus is a neutral side, almost like Virgil, but maybe a little bit more towards the evil side, because he does have Thomas's best interest at heart, but he's willing to sacrifice the best interest of Thomas's friends to get that. So I don't necessarily think it's like the scale from I guess it's in Christian religion, but like just in general, the scales of justice, you know, where you have those two sides, you know, Deceit kind of balances it out, because he's kind of at the same point, you know, Patton's on one side taking care of Thomas's friends while Deceit is on the other, and you need an equal amount of both of them, because a lot of Patton ends up with what we had, and too much Deceit ends up with Can Lying Be Good. So, you know, it's a dichotomy, it really is. And I don't think that Janice was ever evil, but I don't think he's not evil either. He has his own agenda based on the protection of Thomas. Now, do I agree that he has Thomas's best interest in mind? Yes and no. He wants Thomas to take care of himself, and he wants Thomas to recognize that his own self-health is just as important as his friends. That's good, but I also, at the very end of the episode, I know he's teasing Thomas and trying to get things lightened up whenever he talks about, pushing people down the stairs until they have another run of callbacks. Like, obviously Deceit's joking, but at the same time, it's just kind of like, really? Like, I don't know. I can agree and disagree with you at the same time with that. And I also, Roman disagreeing and having a bias towards Janice is something else I'm going to touch on later. But yeah, like, I agree with most of what you said. Now, a lot of the comments are talking about Patton is not manipulative. Okay. He's not on purpose, but he is being manipulative. And I've even said that in previous theories that he was being manipulative, in the way he was talking. Even Janice points this out in the episode whenever he talks about, Patton throwing in some maybes and, why nots and who knows. That kind of talk, that kind of rhetoric, Janice even says this, it's, it makes you really manipulative in the way that you get someone else to react or to do something. It's hard to get there. It's not hating on Patton. He was being manipulative because he thought that the only way to get Thomas to understand was to make things super drastic, which we learned from Janice that he didn't have to do, and Patton knows better now. Like Janice himself said, he didn't think that Patton was doing it on purpose, and I always said that. I've always said that I don't think Patton is being this way on purpose. I don't think he realizes what he's doing because he's trying to make Thomas a good person. Now, am I happy that's gotten to rest? Thank God. You can see the relief on my face whenever Patton says that in this episode, whenever he's like, I'm done asking if Thomas is a good person. I was just like, thank God, because that's an irrelevant question. We know Thomas is a good person. Just because he may make one or two selfish decisions in the span of a couple years of his life doesn't make him a bad person. Choosing himself over his friends doesn't make him a bad person if he's choosing his own needs over their wants. Now, yeah, he can even choose his own wants over their needs, but it really depends on the context of what their needs are. You can't always serve somebody 100% all the time because that makes you a doormat, and that makes you not a good person. Now, we've also learned from this episode that Patton wanted Thomas to not only do something because it was right, but to do it for no reason whatsoever, other than the fact that it's the right thing to do. He wasn't allowed to feel good about it, and he wasn't allowed to do nothing because apparently that's worse than even doing something because you want to do it. Patton is so... I feel bad for him because he's so convinced that any action or any thought is a precursor to action, that any insignificant thing that Thomas might do for himself is wrong, which is definitely not. And I think that might even stem from some of the learning that Patton has done throughout this series. Because might I remind you all to Patton's name episode, Growing Up. A lot of that episode has to do with Patton causing Thomas to not really care about himself. It's, staying up really late, eating unhealthy meals because he can eat whatever he wants, and being a carefree adult without any rules. But then, of course, in that episode, both Roman and Logan kind of chastised Patton a little bit, saying, Thomas has to do these things. He has to do his laundry. He has to eat well. He has to go to bed, and so they kind of put Patton in this position where, okay, so I need to be a responsible adult and take care of everyone else around me, and then maybe that'll also help me take care of myself. I don't know. That's the kind of vibe I got because I rewatched most of the series recently, and I just felt that was the kind of lesson Patton took from that. That Patton took that we have to do everything exactly right for everybody else, and that I come last because I have so much available to me already. That I am already really... that I'm already so well off that I don't need much. I guess that's the best way of looking at it. But so Patton relieving himself of Thomas's well-being and letting Janice take the wheel for once is incredibly big of him. I feel like that's really difficult for Patton to do because, like he said, he's always felt like he has to have an answer. And if he doesn't have an answer, then what's Thomas supposed to do? Like, how is he supposed to move on if Patton doesn't have an answer for him? But luckily, Janice was able to convey to him in this episode that he doesn't always have to have an answer, that they can learn together, that they don't have to do everything alone. Patton doesn't have to have the answer on his own. And he can look to Janice, he can look to the other sides and Thomas himself, and they can all work together on an answer. That he doesn't have to do it alone. And I feel like that's a big part of the ending whenever Patton goes to leave and Janice is like, I'll take care of him. Because I don't know if Patton has ever allowed any other side to burden that responsibility on themselves. Because they all seem to turn to Patton. They even did in that episode I mentioned earlier in Growing Up, whenever they got too strict and Thomas was no longer having fun. And, Logan even turns to Patton and asks them what they're doing wrong. And, Patton's like, you have to enjoy the little things. But at the same time, Patton, I think, was harmed by that episode in the sense of like, okay, so I did all this free stuff, but now I have to care about other people because Thomas really loves his friends and that's the right thing to do. So a lot of the rest of those comments in that one comment I just mentioned, a lot of the other discussion in there is Patton versus Janice being manipulative. They both were. Neither of them is right. Because, like I've said 1,000 times, it's a dichotomy of the two of them needing to work together to create a perfect understanding of the view of both self-care and care for others as a whole. And, yes, Janice was being manipulative. He was. Should he gone about it in a different way? Yeah. But for the storytelling purposes, I can see why he went the way that he did in both Can Lying Be Good and the original SvS. So that makes sense to me. Okay, so this next comment says they hope I bring this up, so I will bring it up for you and I'll talk about it. It's Julie Ness, and they say, I really hope you'll bring up how Logan was ignored and rejected in this episode. Patton literally saw the skip all button and didn't hesitate for a second. Now, okay, he didn't hesitate. Okay, he didn't hesitate because he's scared. Patton is scared. He knows that Logan will talk their way out of what Patton is saying. I think Patton is afraid of being wrong in this specific stuff because it's his responsibility. Logan, for as much as I love his character, he's a big know-it-all. He always jumps into every conversation and always has the answers. I'm waiting for an episode where he can't answer it, gosh dang it. Not that I don't love him, but it would be nice if Logan wasn't always the answer. Like, I would like an episode where maybe, like, emotions are going out of control and Logan can't do anything, so it's up to Patton or Roman maybe, but whatever. But the point is that I really understand Patton hitting the skip all button. I do. He was nervous about Logan bringing even more of an argument to his situation. He already was afraid he was leading Thomas on the wrong path. At this point in the episode, they're already at the point where maybe Patton was wrong. Maybe the decision they made in part 1 was wrong. And Patton was getting nervous. He was afraid that he was going to be called out for being a fraud, basically. So, of course, in that heated moment, he hit the skip all button. But you know Patton loves Logan. That has been proven time and time again, and it's been proven time and time again that Patton really regards Logan for what he does. He's one of the first sides to say that Logan is cool. He's one of the first, he's always put Logan on this pedestal of awesome that I don't know. It's hard for me to put into words, but, like, I don't think he did it to hurt Logan. I think he did it because he was scared. And it's fair for him to be nervous because Thomas's morals are being tested now. They're being tested in a way that Patton is not used to. He's used to Thomas completely self-sacrificing himself time and time again for his friends and not even batting an eye about it. But now Thomas is starting to question it. Like, do I have to do this all the time? And Patton's just like, I don't know. And that's how we get the end of the episode whenever he turns into Froggy Patton. So it makes sense to me. But continuing on with the comment, Logan's comment when he shows up again, not that any of you care, and I'll do you a favor and spare my company. He himself doesn't think the others care for him or want him around. And that's true. I touched on that earlier, but yeah, I wish Logan had been around when Roman asked where Logan had went. That was the first thing they asked once Deceit showed up. And Logan will get his day. He'll understand that the other sides do need him. I'm pretty sure that he's okay with Thomas. I think it's mostly the other sides that he's a little meh about. Obviously, he was upset that Patton hit the skip all button because Patton tried to apologize, and Logan says the name of the philosopher he's talking about really loud to interrupt Patton and shut him down. So obviously Logan was upset. And I do think it'll come back in the future eventually to, like, they'll talk about that more. But obviously Logan has been building up to this idea that he's not needed, or that they talk over him anyway. I mean, gosh, that's been going on since Moving On Part 1. So that's not surprising, at least to me. Okay, so in the next part of Julie's comment, they say, so Roman, I actually get why he acted that way towards Janice. Previously, when he's been on the same side as him and arguing Patton once scolded him, so it's only natural to be against him now. And then what happens? He's the bad guy. He made a comment about how Janice can be genuine, and he said to build up, has self-confidence, so he'd fall further, which sounds like Roman's projecting because that's how he felt. I could go on, but I rambled enough. You know, I agree. Now, I guess since this comment kind of talks about the ending, I'll go ahead and get my feelings on the ending. So, at the very end, we have Janice is desperate. He's so desperate that he reveals his name to the other sides. He does that I think it's a theater thing where they like hold up their hands or, whatever, like showing off the real you. It's also kind of the thing they do when you swear in court. You put your hand on, I guess it's a Bible or whatever you want, but I think it's standardly the Bible, and you hold your hand up and you swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, blah, blah, blah. So that's kind of what that references. But anyway, so Janice gives us his name. Very emotionally driven, because Janice is just like, I just need you guys to trust me. Because Janice doesn't only speak in falsehoods, and I don't know who started that. Like, obviously, yeah, the joke when he first showed up was that he only speaks in lies, but you can't function that way, and even the side that tells lies would obviously have to know how to tell the truth, so there's that. But anyway, we get Roman that laughs at him. And it's not just like, a lot of people compared it to when Virgil gave his name. No, that is very different. Very different. In the episode when Virgil gives his name, Roman kind of snickers and then doesn't laugh until Patton says it should be something like virgin, and then Roman belly laughs. And Thomas is like, why is that funny? And it goes to Roman and it's just like, it's not. So, but in this one, you literally have Roman belly laugh immediately, insult the name, say it's stupid, and then on top of that, you have him say that it's like, what are you, a middle school librarian? Like, it's a stupid name. He says stupid twice. Okay, Roman, buddy, I love you, but that was so mean. Like, I get that you're really upset at Janice, I do, and you have every right to be, but like, that's not how you get back at somebody. You don't insult them at a time of very high vulnerability. You just don't do that. So I can understand Janice snapping back at him, oh my God, Roman, thank God you don't want the mustache. So like this, I swear to God, most of this video is just me quoting the episode to you guys. I apologize, I've only seen it like 7 times. Roman has every right to be upset at Janice, obviously, because Janice played him like a fiddle and can lie and be good, and then was also buttering him up in SvS Part 1. The reason why he's so upset at Janice is that he's not actually only upset at Janice. He's actually also incredibly upset with Patton and Thomas and himself, because we know that Roman was on the callback train. He was. We are aware of that. He's Thomas's creativity, his ego, his pride, and, obviously he helps him with all the, plays and stuff that Thomas does, whether that be theater or an actual, camera roll. So, obviously he was on the callback train, and then you have Patton who, like I said earlier, you fought for honor, why are you pushing Thomas to be dishonest? The thing that I've always disliked about the whole SvS Part 1 that I don't know if I've ever actually said before, but like, why do they talk about Thomas being dishonest when it means going to the callback? The callback's not fake, it's real. So why does Thomas constantly say that he's a liar for wanting to go to the callback when that's not a lie? He does want to go to the callback, and telling his friends that he wants to go to the callback is not a lie. I don't know. I've always thought that was really kind of a weird thing. Like, it's not like you're not telling them the truth. Like, there actually is a callback and you actually want to go. Like, it would be a lie if you did what Roman suggested at the beginning of SvS part 1, which is whenever he talks about his Aunt Patty in the hospital. That's a lie. Wanting to go to the callback is not a lie. Like, that's a actual thing. Now, does it make him a bad person to change his mind about wanting to go to the wedding? No, that's not really either. I don't know. I've always thought it was weird that they called it a lie. I'm getting off topic. The point is Roman was manipulated for a very long time, so for him to snap at Janice is understandable, because now he's being told that he's supposed to trust him after being manipulated by over 2 episodes and being buttered up and everything. Now, I think Janice was being honest whenever he talked about how Roman giving up the callback and sentencing Thomas to go to the wedding was a great sacrificial thing. I think that was genuine of Janice. I think he really meant it when he was talking to Roman about that. I do think that Roman is not understanding Janice completely because of the fact that all he sees it in black and white. And that may also have to do with the fact that Roman himself is a dichotomy. You have to remember that he's not a full side. He doesn't have all of the dark, impossible, negative thoughts that creativity would have, because he's only half. So it's possible that him being able to see both the good and the bad may be impossible. We don't know. So he's convinced that Deceit is 100% evil, because that's what he was told. He was told that Deceit was not good at all by Patton, who was the one in charge. So obviously, now that he's being told the opposite after being manipulated and all that stuff, it's like, how can we trust him? How can we trust him after all this time? After all this time, you've told me that siding with him means that I'm evil, that I'm wrong. How can you side with him now and mean that I'm the wrong one, that I'm the evil one now because I don't want to side with him? What is the truth? Where is the truth in all of this? And I think him ending up on that conclusion is really easy, because Patton and Thomas, they don't say anything. They don't talk. They don't mention anything at all after Janice says the Remus comment to Roman. You know, they're quiet because they don't really know whose side to be on there, because Janice is right, Roman's being a dick, and then on top of that, Roman's also right because Janice did do all that stuff. He did manipulate all of them and be not the greatest side in the world and did a lot of bad things. For Patton and Thomas, they don't want to choose a side because both of them have done something wrong. Not that either one of them is right in their scenario at the moment, but they've both done something wrong to each other and to the other sides. And so picking a side at the moment is not good. You shouldn't do that. But I do wish that Thomas and Patton had said something, like, more than what they did, like the silent treatment of, you know, like, Roman at the end breaks my heart whenever he asked, you know, Thomas to reconfirm if, you know, he's Thomas's hero, and Thomas says, "Of course you're my hero." And then, of course, Roman looks right at Deceit, and Deceit nods. Now, I heard that in the live stream, Thomas and Joan said they were not going to explain what the nod was, that the nod is up to interpretation, whether Janice was confirming that Thomas was lying or if he was telling the truth. Based on Janice's face, once Roman reacts to the nod, he kind of looks scared or taken aback. I think Janice was nodding to confirm that Thomas does think you are his hero still. But Roman, because all he sees Deceit as is a liar, he freaks out, thinking, wow, you know, I can't believe this. You really don't think I'm your hero anymore. I have fucked up that badly. Wow. So, yeah, I think personally that Deceit was saying that Roman is still Thomas's hero, and Roman mistook that because he's convinced that Deceit is pure evil. So we've established, Jonathan Harsh mentions this in the comment, but he's talking about how, like, Janice helps Thomas lie to people, but he's sick and tired of Thomas lying to himself, which is true. But you have to remember that Janice is not only lying. That may be his number one function, but like we've seen with all the other sides, that's not his only function. He also has self-care, self-preservation, as Patton said at the end of Can Lying Be Good. And you also have, apparently he's also denial, because for those of you who didn't notice, but in the screenshot where it's a reference to Mother, the game, at the top are all the side's logos, and when you hover over Deceit's logo, it actually said denial. And it's also important to remember that when they hovered over Roman's icon, it said passion, not creativity, so that's interesting to note. A lot of you in the comments are talking about how we're gonna get Roman's room next, and I agree. We did learn from the live stream that the next episode is gonna be an Asides episode, but we don't really have a timeline for it because of quarantine and everything happening in the world right now, so who knows when that'll come out. But I do agree with you that I feel like the two-parter ending of the season that they've said is always going to be a two-parter. I do feel like it's going to be Roman's room. It's important to note that it's also been like 3 years since we've seen a room of the sides. I was rewatching the episodes today, and Moving On Part 1 and 2 came out in October of 2018, so it's been a long time. But I'm excited! I'm excited to see what they'll do with Roman's room, and I remember an off comment a while back that they didn't do Roman's room sooner because they couldn't do it without introducing a new side, which is Remus, which leads me to believe that Roman and Remus share a room. Maybe. So that would be interesting to see how they do that. But yeah, so I do agree that I think Roman's room is coming up. I'm very excited to see how they do it, what it looks like, how it works, how it functions. Like, is it similar to Virgil's and Patton's, where you kind of get overwhelmed by the room, and if you do get overwhelmed, what is the result of being overwhelmed? Like, do you get more brave? Do you get more reckless? Do you get more courageous? Do you get more egotistical? Because obviously Roman is also Thomas's pride and ego. So what could it be? I don't know. So we have this one comment that touches on a lot of things I wanted to talk about, so I guess we'll just go all the way through it. I guess it's Kakuna, or Kakuna. I don't know how you pronounce that. I apologize. But they start the comment by saying it was the most emotionally charged episode, which I agree. Though I also think that you need to go back and watch Moving On Part 2, because that one's really emotional. But anyway, so there are some fun facts that, for those of you, I will talk about here if you didn't notice them while watching. So in the fighting game portion of the thing, which I thought was a reference to Street Fighter, but I don't actually think it is, or it's a combination of that, but I know it's a fighting game of some kind. There is a part where you can see the number 07734 in orange at the top. If you turn that around, it's a very commonly used way of spelling hello in numbers if you reverse it. And a lot of people have thought that that was Orange Boy, our Orange Unknown side, saying hello to us. So that's kind of scary. Because I still don't know what they represent. I'm still on the anger train because I feel like Logan's going to explode one day and it's just going to happen. And I'm stuck on anger or wrath, okay? I'm just stuck on it. I don't know why. But I'm stuck on that. And then during the Mario portion of the thing, Remus uses the numbers to spell out boobs. He does 0085 to spell out boobs, and then you have Virgil in the corner changing the time, like it says time wasted or something or whatever, and then it's all like in purple letters, like he's there. And then and then it shows AU as like the world, so like alternate universe. So that's pretty cool too, you know, all these little things. I also like that this isn't in the comment, but I also like the Final Fantasy thing at the end was a reference to a short that Thomas had made before with his friends. I thought that was pretty cool that they brought back the characters that were fighting and then the big baddie played by Dominic. So I thought that was actually a pretty neat thing. Something else they talk about how, I don't really know if I agree with this or not, but a lot of people have talked about this where like the next time that Thomas tries to summon Roman, he's gonna get Remus instead. I do think that would be a pretty cool idea because, like, you know, he calls for creativity, but now that he knows there's two, if Roman doesn't answer, then maybe Remus will. Especially if Roman doesn't want to be around at the moment or he's still upset. That could be interesting. I wouldn't mind that, actually. Yeah, anxious mess. Listen, I'm not done watching, but the way your eyes widen every time Patton says something is questionable, that is questionable, drives me wild. Such a mood. Yes! That was mostly my reaction to this entire freaking episode, was just like, Patton, are you kidding me? Like, boy, I need you to, like, not. Just like, oh man, he's such a, wow. Okay, so Alexis actually points this out, and that was something I wanted to talk about, was, did anyone else notice that Janice's background lighting is lighter in this episode than the others? Yeah, if you go back to, he stood in Logan's place a couple of times now, so if you go back to previous episodes, his background is not as bright in the earlier episodes. It's very dark. But in this one, when he shows up as Logan, when they get back to the house after the whole video game Mega Man reference and stuff, they get back to Thomas's apartment, and the background behind Janice is lighter. And I think it's on purpose, because I can't tell what the light source is, but you can actually still kind of see the kitchen and dining area a little bit more than you normally would. It's a little bit brighter, and I think that's on purpose to show Janice's acceptance by Thomas. Or at least his seat at the table, as it were. That Thomas is going to start trusting him, and we're going to get more of Janice in the future in a positive light. So that's actually kind of cool. Also, all of y'all making Hamilton reference in my comments, thank you. Also, can we talk about the fact that Hamilton's going to be out on Disney Plus and like a movie thing in July? I am not ready. I will reinstate my Disney Plus thing, and I'll watch it like 1,000 times, because God, I love Hamilton. So, Silver Medal Assassin brings up the fact that Thomas said he made a decision with a blindfold on, and Patton widens his eyes in response. You're free to have your theory about the orange boy wearing a blindfold, but I don't think that's what it is. I actually think that that's a reference to Deceit at the very end of SvS Part 1, talking about how they're making a decision with the blindfold on, and how if you took the blindfold off, it would make it easier to hit the piñata and get the stuff you want. But for now, you have it on, and you're refusing to take it off to make the game easier for yourself. I think Patton was realizing that Thomas was making a reference that Deceit did, which probably gives you the hint that Deceit was there. That he was already active in the episode, and he had been there and been listening since the very beginning, I think. A lot of you have mentioned how when Deceit and Patton are together at the end, the music playing in the background is a combination of the two of theirs, and I did notice that after a couple of viewings. I don't always have the best audio quality when I'm watching the episode. Sometimes I'm watching it on my computer without headphones, or I'm watching it on my TV and it's kind of quiet, so all I can really hear is them talking. But no, that's actually a kind of cool little piece of trivia. Because I think that really represents the dichotomy of the two of them, and how they really do need to work together to make Thomas a better person overall, not just towards other people, but also towards himself. We have established now that in this episode, Patton learns that there isn't a moral high ground. There is a middle ground for morality. You can be somewhere in the middle of both selfish and selfless. And I think that the next character that has to learn that is Roman. And I think even Remus needs to learn this as well, because obviously Remus is considerably in the more negative of creativity, and the more dark and evil, I guess. So yeah, I do think that we are going to get an episode where Roman has to learn that not everything is all good and not everything is all evil. Like he tells Thomas, at the end, you're supposed to be good. Roman believes that by Thomas giving Janice a seat at the table, as it were, that means Thomas isn't a good person anymore, which is completely false. It means he is a normal person like everybody else, that he's not any more special and he's not any more abnormal than anybody else. He's just an average person with faults just like everybody else. And I think it's Roman's turn to learn this. Sandy Rock 5 says this, but several others of you in the comments have also said it as well, that you believe that Logan and Deceit switched places when the cane grabbed Logan and pulled him out, when Patton hit the skip all button, and I do think so, because I also kind of agree with something I think I've seen somewhere before. I don't know if somebody else has said this or if it's coming out of my own brain, but I think when Patton was hitting the skip all button, he was lying to himself that he could solve everything on his own, and he didn't want Logan's help. So not only was he hitting the skip all button and Deceit dragged Logan out of frame to take his place, but I also think that also helped Deceit come into the frame even more, because Patton was lying to himself again, like thinking that he had to have all the answers when he doesn't. So I think that's probably around the time when Janice came into play. Do we know exactly when he came into the episode? I don't think so. I don't think there's any definitive proof that this is the exact point he took over for Logan. Obviously, you can tell closer up to the reveal that Logan is not himself. He's getting a little bit more emotional in the way he speaks, so obviously that's more up Deceit's alley, because obviously Deceit can get upset and get angry. We saw that at the end of SvS Part 1, so yeah, but I don't know exactly when they trade spots, but I do agree that Patton hitting that skip all button definitely gave Deceit more of an open to join the party. And a lot of you are talking about the barking dog. I apologize. And some of you have asked where CJ was. So CJ wasn't in the video because they weren't feeling that great that day, but they were in the room with me, watching it with me. I was only just recording myself. And the reason why Lola was barking was because she was alone, locked in a bedroom without CJ, and Lola has pretty bad separation anxiety, so she barks if we are in the house and she's locked up in a separate room. She does it all the time. She's totally fine, and I apologize for the barking in the background. We have a dog, and she doesn't like being alone, so she barked the entire time. But I apologize if that was distracting for all of you. There's really nothing we can do about it. That's just how she is. So if I got, like, heated or upset at the episode and I talked too loud, she would hear me and she would bark. But she's also just alone, and she doesn't like being alone, so she barks. So I apologize for that. Okay, so Victoria Cortez brings up a question that I guess I can discuss for a bit. They say, do you think that one of the reasons Roman ducked out at the end is not just because there's an acceptance of another dark side, but also that would mean that they might have to accept Remus down the line? And that's true. Roman obviously doesn't like Remus very much in relation to what he represents, and also Remus is kind of everything he doesn't want to be, so that would make sense that Roman realizes that accepting Janice means they would have to accept Remus, which is supposed to be all the things Roman doesn't like about himself, so what does that say about Roman? And then the other thing that they said is that his sacrifice he made for the sake of Thomas and his morality would have meant nothing, and that hurts him a lot, therefore he's not the hero. Yeah, I think that has a lot to do with it too, that Roman made this sacrifice of giving up the callback to appease Patton and Thomas to do what they deemed the correct thing, and then turn around and tell him that, oops, wait a minute, you made that so big, selfless act for absolutely no reason. It was actually the wrong choice, and now it's the wrong choice, so that, like, in his eyes, it's just like, well, does that make me the villain now? Like, am I the wrong person? So, yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that he doesn't know his place in Thomas's life anymore, because not only has he been denied his purpose for a very long time, because Thomas has not been really doing anything for himself. He's been doing everything for his friends lately, and he got Thomas to get a callback for this really important thing, only to be told that it wasn't that important, that somebody's wedding was more important than everything they had strived to work for, which obviously Thomas didn't think that was the case. But Patton convinced him that it was the case, because you can't be selfish, but it's not selfish because it's your job, but whatever, you know what I'm saying? Like, Roman has been told that every time he wants anything, and you have to remember, he is Thomas's pride and ego, so, like, yes, you can eventually go too far, and Roman even says that. Like, Roman does, Thomas's acting is freaking impeccable in the last part of this episode, because I love the part where he imitates Deceit as Roman, you know, Thomas put a dime in the St. Jude's charity box, what a good boy. Like, I love that. That's great. But, like, Roman has a point there. You know, when is it enough? Like, if they do start doing this selfish stuff of, you know, Thomas choosing himself over his friends or over others in general, when is it enough? Like, when are they going to not be selfish anymore? And I think that's because Roman thinks it's either all or nothing. There is no in between here. Patton is starting to see now that it doesn't have to be, you know, all selfish. You can actually do some selfish things as a form of self-care to take care of yourself, and then also be selfless to help your friends or help your community or the people around you. Roman has to learn that as well. He has to learn that there is a give and take, and there's not all or nothing. You can have a happy medium between the two. He thinks that with Deceit having a seat at the table, that Thomas is just going to be selfish all the time. That Deceit is always going to want Thomas to take the selfish route. He might be right. We don't really know how Deceit will react in future situations if Thomas has another conundrum where there's something he really wants to do versus something his friends need. That will, you know, I don't know if that'll ever come to pass, but Roman is right in questioning how Janice is going to react to having this power, as it were, now that Thomas is giving him a seat at the table. So Roman breaking down is more of a conflict inside his own head, is that, am I actually the hero? Am I actually doing the right thing for Thomas anymore? I don't know. And we will learn over time, and so will Roman, that obviously, yes, he's always thought with Thomas at the core of his decisions, so he is doing the right thing. But it's really hard for Roman to grasp that with how many changes have happened so quickly to him. First, Janus was completely wrong, then he was kind of right a little bit, and now he is right. So it's changed so fast for Roman that it's really hard for him to follow, and I do think he'll learn over time. But for now, our boy is confused, and he just had to leave because he didn't really know what to do. Again, more people, as I'm reading the comments, are talking about like Deceit's real purpose, like what he actually represents. As much as I would like clarity, I do think that I have a video that I'm thinking about making, so I won't talk about it completely here, but it's called Deceit versus Self-Preservation. And I think that Roman and Remus and Patton weren't the only ones affected by Thomas's upbringing. I think self-preservation was affected. I really think that Deceit's original form was self-preservation. Whenever, as growing up, as things began to take form of good versus bad, selfishness versus selflessness became a big deal, self-preservation became lying, because that part of you that wants to protect yourself begins to lie about everything. It lies about who you truly are, how you truly feel about situations like that and things that you're put in. And I feel like that's what Deceit originally was, and he's just been so corrupted in the same way that Roman, Remus, and Patton were from Thomas's upbringing, that, you know, that's just how he ended up. And I think that it's something that he's not proud of, and he may even be scarred by that physically, by the snake face. You know, we don't know if Deceit's always had that snake face. You know, we don't know if that's a conscious thing that is on him, imprinted on him because of the way that Thomas was raised. We know Laura's been changed a little bit, but we know Virgil's eyeshadow comes from his room, and the constant anxiety that Thomas feels, it imprints itself onto Virgil via the eye bags under his eyes. So who's to say that Deceit stuff isn't the same because of the snake being the evil villain in Christian religion? You know, Catholic, I guess that's what Thomas is. But, you know, how do we know that that's not why Deceit is a half snake person? Because of the story of Adam and Eve and the Garden of Eden. It could be. So I think that Deceit was changed when Thomas was very young. I think he was originally self-preservation, and then over time he changed into who he is now because of how divisive Thomas's brain became between what's right, what's wrong, what's selfish, what's selfless, and what's good and what's evil. Okay guys, so that is it. I hope you enjoyed this discussion video of one of the best episodes of the Slander Sides to date, and I hope you guys enjoyed my discussion and talking about this series. I have a lot more that I want to talk about that'll come around in future episodes. I do have a lot of videos planned. I just have to get my brain, my executive dysfunction to do stuff, because I am not quarantined like everybody else. I am an essential worker during this time, so I am still working my 45 hours a week at my job, and then coming home being very exhausted, having to deal with the general public and all this mess going on in the world. So I do apologize that I'm not getting things out as quickly, but I do hope you guys enjoyed this video, and, you know, make sure to comment down below all of your theories. I'll be in the comments, chat with you guys if there's anything specific you want to ask me. But until then, guys, I hope you enjoyed. Be sure to subscribe for more, you know, hit that bell, like the video, all that YouTube algorithm stuff, and I will see all of you guys, gals, non-binary pals, everything between or nothing at all in the next video. Bye! Bye-bye. I'm gonna lay down, I'm tired.